Welcome to our Students with King Nonviolence Spotlight Series. Today we are going to tell you about an amazing person who is helping to change the world. When you hear her awesome story, it will hopefully spark something in you to make a difference and make your community better for everybody. Our spotlight person is Miss Jamida Orange. Reverend James Orange was a leading activist in the civil rights movement. He was an assistant to Martin Luther King Jr. Andrew Young called him a gentle giant. But don't get it twisted, Reverend Orange was a true foot soldier. He joined Dr. King during the Birmingham movement, where he organized the demonstrations of school children who were fire hosed and attacked by police dogs. Those images broadcast across the nation helped turn public opinion to support the civil rights movement. Orange also played a key role in civil rights actions in Selma, Memphis, and Chicago, and in Dr. King's last campaign, the Poor People's Movement, in both Memphis and Chicago. Reverend Orange and his awesome wife, Mrs. Cleophas Orange, had 5 children. One of them was a chip off the old block, and her name is Jamida Orange. And yes, you guessed it, she's a leader in her own right. She and her younger sister directly followed in the footsteps of her father, and her other sisters went into law enforcement to keep her father and his friends out of jail, or at least make the process faster for them. How about that? Jamida has taken up the cause of social justice where her father and mother left off. Jamida organized one of the largest marches in the country, honoring and celebrating the national holiday observance of Dr. King's birthday, as well as the annual commemorative march for Bloody Sunday in 2008 through 2010. Just like Jamida, you too can grab the torch of social justice and make the world a better place.
Because there's one thing that I learned from my father is he was truly dedicated to the ideals and the principles of Dr. King. Thus, our household was surrounded by those ideals and those principles. There's nothing like getting in trouble and then having to go to the bathroom and read the Bible when you fight with your siblings, you know, for those of you who raise your hand, and you have to go in the bathroom, you have to read scripture. And you can't find a little scripture, you got to read a whole section. So it's nothing like, you know, he was truly dedicated to the King Center, Mrs. King, and Dr. King, and then his legacy.
Yeah.
When those who were out in the field, my dad was one of the first field staffers hired by Dr. King. And when he was out in the field, all of them got death threats.
Right.
But we didn't know. And I came, you know, I'm a little bit older than Celeste, but I wasn't there under Dr. King, but the death threats continued even after his death. And so we didn't know about the death threats. What I do know is that when they threatened, the most memorable for me is when they killed Jimmy Lee Jackson, or they shot Jimmy Lee Jackson and he later died, and it was because of the night march. And that's how the Selma to Montgomery march came about, because they were going to hang my dad. And they had cleared, he was in the jail. Marion, Alabama is probably about the size of this room. And they were going to hang him. The leaders in Marion at that time had a rally, what we would call a mass rally. And law enforcement from all over the state of Alabama bum rushed the church where they were having their mass rally. In the meantime, they ended up killing or shooting Jimmy Lee Jackson. So it was from that night of that mass rally that Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot. And for some reason, nobody knows how my dad got out of jail. But he was saved because of that. So one life taken, one life spared. And so for that had a profound impact on me, not as like you all were, because it went over my head. But it wasn't until later, and even so, it wasn't until, a couple of weeks ago when I stood in his cell again or watched my brother go in his cell that the impact immediately, I wouldn't be here. So having worked under Dr. King, my dad wouldn't classify himself as that. My dad was very humbled. He was a humble man. And so the greatest, of course, in his eyes would, of course, be Dr. King. He appreciated the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. And so the greatest would fall in everybody but himself. I think he's a good leader. He was a good leader and a good bridge builder. He led because he taught us how to lead.
So I was born after the year after Dr. King was assassinated. So I went on some marches for that little bit of time. I was jailed at 2. Yay! So I had one arrest under my belt. And they were really proud of their arrest records because I think my dad was jailed 102 times. Yeah, and on the FBI most wanted list from Alabama.
Yeah, Daddy too.
Yeah. So we got the march that I participated in were marches against the continued injustice and the labor marches, because my dad was a civil and labor rights and human rights activist. And so he marched, I did the marches because, we protested against strawberries, Pizza Hut, Pepsi, the whole nine. You name it, I probably protested. And so that's my marching experience. And I do the march every year here downtown Atlanta.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for our Spotlight story with Miss Jamida Orange. As a member of the beloved community, Jamida is doing her part to change the quality of life for all people. If you would like to learn more, visit thekingcenter.org.